Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Valeria and this is the Off-Road Range. Today's video is about finishing cutting an old overgrown fruit garden near my house and the rules for working with the saw. I will talk about myself a little bit later, and now let's discuss the topic of the video. I was talking to an acquaintance recently, and it turned out that he, like me, worked with a chainsaw. During the conversation, it turned out that he doesn't add oil to the gasoline, doesn't add oil to lubricate the chain, doesn't sharpen the chain, works without helmet, raises the chainsaw to head level, and generally violates all possible safety rules. It is a wonder he's still alive. And it is no wonder that his saw was in another repair at the time of this conversation. So my task in this video, as someone who has been sawing for over a year with a professional saw and who has been trained by professionals, is to give a brief introduction on the safe operation and maintenance of the chainsaw. But first, a few words about me and why I am cutting down the remnants of my overgrown garden. You see an old video, a video from my first visit to the property last spring. I bought the land in December 2022 and moved here to live in May 2023. At that point, the land was 80% overgrown wild orchid that was barely bearing fruit. Abandoned fruit forest was almost everywhere. I spent almost a year and a half, many liters of gasoline, many liters of oil, and a lot of money on chainsaw maintenance and repairs. By the way, the last repair cost me $560, but more about that later. Of course, I also spent and am spending a lot of my health, because working with a chainsaw is not only increased physical activity and wear and tear on the body's resources, but also a constant inhalation of gasoline vapors. It has poisoning of the body and deterioration of lung function. For a year and a half of work, I cut down 2,500 square meters of trees on my 10,000 square meters land. I have built a box of a house that doesn't have water, floor, and any furniture equipment yet. I bought a trailer and 2 sea containers as a storage, and bought an old Jeep, which is almost unable to drive due to harsh conditions it has to operate in, and lack of funds doesn't allow normal, full-fledged repairs and modernization. I will tell about my further plan for the off-road range construction a little later. For today, there is no fruit garden in almost the entire area around the house, and today I want to finally finish cutting this piece on my land. I had already worked on it in June and July, but I didn't complete the cutting, firstly, because of the heavy workload and breath in gasoline fumes, and secondly, because of nesting birds in the garden. This place is good for hatching, and as the chicks haven't yet learned to fly well in the summer, there was a bird commotion in the thicket every time I went there. I decided to wait for the chicks to grow up and leave the nest. That way, I wouldn't jeopardize the population on my property. Why am I cutting down this overgrown garden at all? Those who have been watching my videos for a long time know that everything I do for a reason with a purpose. So even though I already have huge piles of downed trees on my property, I continue to cut down the forest further. I do this for several reasons. Firstly, I don't know what's in these thickets. Hazardous waste, rusty metal, glass, old house foundations, and so on. Secondly, there are a lot of poisonous trees there. Thirdly, there are a lot of rotten trees. It is constantly wet there, and it is a perfect place for moss and slime. It is also a good place for ants, snakes, woodworms, bark beetles, and other animals and insects. Also, small fruit trees, although they do not bear fruit, multiply at a great rate. At those places where I cut down last year, thousands of new trees have sprung up, and there is more space, light and moisture for them. Also, I have some quality mature fruit trees I want to give more light and fresh air to. Also, there are valuable small trees that I want to keep, replant or sell. If I leave the overgrown garden, they won't have a chance to survive. And also, I need to clear this area for further site planning and to assess whether I can do what I want to do here. All the work is being done with the chainsaw. Earlier I said that recently I paid a huge amount of money to repair it, and I like to share that story with you. Aging piston rings have ruptured and ruined the crankshaft and piston, as all these parts are close together and rubbing against each other. I had to take it in for service. They changed all the oil seals, the crankshaft and the entire piston set. This is a very complicated and expensive repair that cost me $560. The crankshaft cost about $160 and the piston group replacement about $200. And this is taking into account the discount as a regular customer. For this price you could buy a new chainsaw but less power. But I need my chainsaw with the power it has. The most important thing is that my warranty was over by this time, and there was no real reason for the breakdown. A saw that cost over $1,000 should run 24 hours, 7 days a week with no damage. And although I do a lot of sawing with it, it is certainly not in such volumes and not such large trees that it would break down. Considering that I have already had it repaired under warranty several times, and that the carburetor was replaced just a couple months after I bought it, I have concerns that I originally got a defective chainsaw, but I cannot prove it now. Getting the saw repaired has been a major blow to my budget. Because of this, I will have to postpone some work for the future. And since it is now getting colder and the fall rains are already starting, I will have to postpone the work until spring and possibly even summer, because the water table is high in the spring, especially in my area, since melting snow runs over the mountains all spring and construction is impossible. For those who would like to support me, I created several separate subscriptions on Patreon. For a long-term subscription, I will plant a tree in your honor, and in the near future I will release a video about planting the trees for my viewers who were the first to support me and advocate preserving the planet. I also have Buy Me a Coffee account and several crypto wallets, and I will be grateful to the one-time donations as well. And in order to avoid such breakdowns, as well as to keep your arms, legs, head and other parts of your body safe and sound, I'd like to tell you about how you should work with the chainsaw. Even if you're very far from a chainsaw, I'd like you to understand how serious and dangerous a tool it is, and that any tool requires safety precautions, timely maintenance, and observation during operation, because a working tool and a broken tool sound different. Whoa, this will be hard. The first point is training. You must necessarily undergo training, and not just from some acquaintance or worker, but a full-fledged professional, and preferably repeat everything one more time for yourself. A chainsaw is not the trunk of a new Audi. It will not stop when it touches your hand. A chainsaw is the trunk of a Tesla Cybertruck, but in addition at 12,000 revolutions per minute and with metal sharp teeth. The second point is that you must always observe safety precautions while working. You must be focused, attentive and accurate. If you feel even the slightest fatigue, turn off the chainsaw without a second thought and do something less dangerous. You should definitely be wearing a metal mesh helmet and noise-cancelling headphones. A plastic helmet will not save you from the thaw, but it will save you if a log or a small tree falls on you. Headphones will protect your ears because the chainsaw operates at up to 105 decibels, which is louder than a freight train passing by and comparable to the sound of a helicopter.
That is what I don't like in this helmet. This ear always falls.
You should always put the thaw on the brake when not walking. You may have noticed that I put the thaw on the brake after every tree I cut. But firstly, let the chain stop, otherwise you will eventually break the clutch. After you let off the gas, the chain should stop and not crank. If the chain doesn't stop and moves jerkily, you cannot saw. Do not saw above your chest. You must not lift the running saw up, not even slightly. The maximum allowed is parallel to the ground, but not higher. You cannot stand along the movement of the bar. You must stand to the right or left of the saw, so that if the saw breaks, if it rips or twitch, it won't hit your body. The third point is saw maintenance. You should always mix gasoline and oil in the proper proportions in a separate container. You should always fill the special tank for chain lubrication with oil. It is sometimes acceptable to take cheap oil to lubricate the chain, but you should always use the oil recommended by the manufacturer to run the engine. Otherwise, do not complain about the quality of the thaw later. You should retighten the chain as it tacks. You can see how I do it in the video. You must clean the area under the casing as oil residue, sawdust and sometimes soil accumulate there. You shouldn't use a chainsaw to saw wood that is in sand or dirt. Use a hand saw for that. But perhaps you have a lot of money and you don't care about the tool. Another rule of thumb is to take your saw to a trusted service, preferably a manufacturer-certified service. Many unscrupulous masters replace original parts with cheap Chinese ones, and you will never know about it. Of course, sometimes this can be done in an unscrupulous service center too. You also should make periodic small necessary service. The ideal is to have the service every time you refuel your saw. This means you fill up the gasoline, fill the oil to lubricate the chain, tighten the chain or change it if it's dull, and clean the space under the casing if necessary. You also always need to replace consumables in a timely manner. That is why it is important to know how your saw works and find a good master who will tell you when you need to change the filter, change sprocket, and generally check it over completely without cheating you. In today's world, it is increasingly difficult to find such people. It is also very important to know in advance the most common problems of your model. No matter how good the thaw is, many users before you have already identified the peculiarities of all models.
The fuel is over.
Understanding the problem areas can save you from costly repairs, as well as reduce the risks to you. If we talk about the sawing rules themselves, there are a lot of them, and it is pointless to avoid them theoretically. Moreover, I cannot take such responsibility. But there are many rules about how to start the saw when the engine is cold, at what angle you should saw the tree, from which side to saw it, how to hold the saw correctly, which part of the bar should touch the trunk, and so on. My instruction is not enough for you to be able to work with a chainsaw, and I think you realize it yourself. But you will at least understand that this is a big responsibility and dangerous work, which shouldn't be taken lightly even for a minute, even if you need to cut down one small tree. And even more so, you shouldn't show off in front of anyone. It is in moments of frivolity that accidents happen. even if you're a professional. Let's get back to cutting down the overgrowth. The site is completely cleared. I have only left a few valuable trees that I will keep, replant or sell. What are my next steps? It is quite difficult for me to promise you something because a lot depends on many factors. My earnings, my unforeseen expenses such as $560 for a chainsaw, the weather, how rainy it will be, the possibility of buying materials and their delivery, the possibility of designing some objects since I do it myself, and so on. But I would really like to organize a water supply to my house, as it is very difficult to live the second year without a normal shower and toilet in winter at a minus 30 degrees Celsius. But it is almost the middle of October, and I realize that every day I have less time. I will try to do my best and will notify you about my plans. And what I will do later, and what I will do with the cleared from trees territory, you will see in the next videos. It was Valeria, the off-road trench. I wish you all the best and see you soon.